The howling wind slammed against Nathaniel like a freight train as he spotted the overturned SUV half buried in the snowdrift just off the highway shoulder. Without a second thought, he yanked the wheel of his black Range Rover, skidded to a stop, and plunged straight into the blinding whiteout, heart hammering against his ribs. "Hang on," he shouted over the roar, boots crunching through knee-deep drifts while icy needles stung his face. The mother inside was screaming for her little boy, her voice raw and terrified. Nathaniel wrenched the crumpled door open, glass crunching under his gloves, and pulled the woman free first, then reached back for the child who was sobbing in the back seat. "I've got you both," he promised, voice steady even though his own legs burned from the cold. He carried them one by one to his vehicle, wrapping them in the emergency blanket he always kept in the trunk for Chicago winters that could kill in minutes. By the time the ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, Nathaniel's designer coat was soaked through and his hands were numb. At the hospital, the mother, Sarah, she told him between shaky breaths, clutched his sleeve and refused to let go. "You saved us," she whispered, tears mixing with melting snow on her cheeks. Her son, Tommy, only 6, stared at Nathaniel with wide, trusting eyes. "You're like a superhero, mister." Nathaniel forced a smile, but inside something twisted. He was no hero. He was just a 35-year-old CEO who had spent the last decade building a tech empire and a perfect straight image to keep his conservative family happy. Fiancée Emily waited at home with dinner plans and wedding catalogs. His father expected grandchildren and boardroom airs, not questions. Sarah's phone had died in the crash, so Nathaniel stayed while the doctors checked them over. He called her emergency contact himself, a number she recited from memory. "My brother Leo," she explained. "He'll come right away." Nathaniel nodded politely, but the name slid past him like any other. He was already thinking about the conference call he'd missed and the investor meeting tomorrow. When the doctor finally cleared Sarah and Tommy for release, Nathaniel offered to drive them home. "It's the least I can do," he said, surprised at how much he meant it. The storm had eased to a steady fall, but the roads were still treacherous. In the back seat, Tommy fell asleep against his mother, thumb in his mouth. Sarah kept glancing at Nathaniel in the rearview mirror. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "Most people would have just called 911 and kept driving." Nathaniel shrugged, eyes on the road. "I couldn't leave you there." The words felt heavier than he intended. For years he had trained himself to keep moving, to never stop for anything that might crack the polished surface of his life. Tonight something had shifted. When they reached Sarah's modest bungalow in the suburbs, a beat-up pickup was already in the driveway, headlights cutting through the dark. A tall man stepped out, collar turned up against the wind. Even from a distance, Nathaniel felt the air change. Sarah hugged her brother tightly. "Leo, this is the man who saved us." Leo turned, snowflakes catching in his dark hair, and their eyes met. Nathaniel's stomach dropped. 10 years vanished in a single heartbeat. The same sharp jawline, the same warm brown eyes that once looked at him like he was the only person in the world. Leo, the boy who had kissed him behind the dorms at Northwestern, who had whispered promises Nathaniel had been too scared to keep. The boy he had pushed away with cruel words when his father found a single text message and threatened to cut him off completely. Leo's face went pale, then hardened. "Nathaniel," he said, voice low and careful. Sarah looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" Neither answered right away. Tommy stirred in his mother's arms, breaking the silence. Nathaniel forced a professional smile. Small world. But inside, the carefully constructed walls he had built for a decade were already starting to crack. Leo helped Sarah and Tommy inside, while Nathaniel stood on the porch, snow piling on his shoulders. He should leave. He should drive straight back to his penthouse and pretend tonight never happened. Instead, he waited. When Leo came back out, the tension between them crackled like the storm itself. "You didn't have to stay," Leo said, arms crossed. Nathaniel met his gaze. "I wanted to make sure they were okay." Leo's laugh was short and bitter. "Still playing the hero, huh?" The words stung more than the cold. Nathaniel swallowed. "Leo, it's been 10 years, Leo finished. "I know." He glanced back at the warm light spilling from the house. "Sarah doesn't know about us. She never did. Let's keep it that way." Nathaniel nodded once, throat tight. But as he turned to leave, Leo's voice stopped him. "Thank you." For saving them. Nathaniel didn't trust himself to answer. He walked back to his car, hands shaking on the wheel, the weight of every unsaid word pressing down harder than the blizzard ever could. The drive home felt endless, and for the first time in years, the life he had built felt like a cage he had locked himself inside. The next morning, Nathaniel woke to a dozen missed calls from Emily and a text from his father reminding him about the quarterly board meeting. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the night before on loop. Leo's face in the snow. The way his voice still carried the same quiet hurt. Nathaniel showered, dressed in his usual charcoal suit, and drove to the office like nothing had changed. But everything had. During the meeting, he caught himself drifting, remembering stolen afternoons in Leo's old apartment, the way Leo used to trace patterns on his back and talk about a future neither of them had been brave enough to claim. His CFO noticed. "You okay, Nate? You look like you saw a ghost." Nathaniel forced a laugh. "Just the storm messing with my head." He buried himself in spreadsheets and investor calls, but every quiet moment brought Sarah's grateful smile and Tommy's sleepy superhero back to mind. That evening, Emily came over with Thai takeout and wedding magazines. "I found the perfect venue," she said, spreading glossy pages across his kitchen island. Nathaniel nodded at the right times, but his mind was miles away in a suburban bungalow. When Emily left, he poured himself a scotch and opened his laptop. Before he could stop himself, he typed Leo's name into the search bar. A small photography studio website came up. Leo had built a quiet life taking portraits and teaching at the community college. No social media drama, no flashy success, just steady, honest work. Nathaniel closed the tab quickly, heart racing. He had no right to look. He had thrown away any right 10 years ago when he told Leo their relationship was just a phase in front of his father's lawyer. 2 days later, Sarah called. "Tommy keeps asking about you," she said warmly. "He drew you a picture. Would you come by for dinner Friday? Leo will be there too." Nathaniel's first instinct was to refuse. But the hope in her voice, the memory of Tommy's trusting eyes, made him say yes before he could think better of it. Friday night, he stood on the porch again, this time holding a stuffed bear for Tommy and flowers for Sarah. Leo opened the door, wearing a simple navy sweater that made his shoulders look even broader. Their eyes locked for a beat too long. "Come in," Leo said, voice neutral. Dinner was warm and loud with Tommy chattering about school and superheroes. Sarah kept thanking Nathaniel until he begged her to stop. Leo stayed quiet, passing dishes and avoiding Nathaniel's gaze. After dessert, Tommy dragged Nathaniel to see his room, leaving the adults alone in the kitchen. Sarah poured coffee. "Leo told me you two went to college together. Small world, right?" Nathaniel's hand tightened around his mug. "Yeah, small world." Leo's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. Later, when Sarah took Tommy upstairs for a bath, the silence between the two men stretched tight. "Why did you really come tonight?" Leo asked finally, leaning against the counter. Nathaniel set his mug down. "Because your sister asked. And because I couldn't stop thinking about what happened on that highway." Leo's eyes softened for the first time. "You could have died out there." Nathaniel shrugged. "I didn't." Leo stepped closer, close enough that Nathaniel caught the faint scent of his cologne, same one from college. "You still do that thing where you pretend you're fine when you're not." Nathaniel looked away. "Some things don't change." The words hung between them like smoke. When Sarah came back down, the moment broke, but Nathaniel left that night carrying the weight of Leo's quiet understanding and the terrifying realization that the walls he had built were no longer keeping anything out. The following week, work became a blur of deadlines and pressure from his father to set a wedding date. Emily sensed something was off, but attributed it to stress. Nathaniel smiled through it all, but at night he lay awake replaying every glance from Leo. On Wednesday, he found himself driving past the photography studio after a late meeting. He told himself he was just curious. When he saw Leo locking up, he pulled over before he could talk himself out of it. Leo froze when he recognized the car. "Stalking me now?" he asked, but there was no bite in it. Nathaniel got out. "I wanted to see if you were okay after everything." Leo studied him for a long moment. "I'm okay. Are you?" The question hit harder than it should have. Nathaniel looked down at the snow-dusted sidewalk. "I don't know anymore." Leo nodded slowly. "That's a start." He hesitated, then pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it over. "If you ever want to talk, Really talk. Call me. Nathaniel took the card like it was made of glass. As he drove away, the city lights blurred through the windshield, and for the first time in a decade, he let himself wonder what his life might have looked like if he had been brave enough to choose differently that day in his father's office. Nathaniel stared at Leo's card for 3 full days before he finally dialed the number. They met at a quiet coffee shop on the north side, far from downtown, where anyone might recognize the CEO. Leo was already there when Nathaniel arrived, 2 steaming mugs on the table. Black, 2 sugars, Leo said, sliding one over. Nathaniel managed a small smile. You remembered. They talked carefully at first, about Sarah's recovery, Tommy's superhero obsession, the photography work Leo loved. Then the conversation turned, like a current pulling them under. Why didn't you ever reach out? Leo asked quietly. Nathaniel's throat tightened. My father threatened to pull every cent from my tuition and my future. I was 22 and terrified. I thought if I denied us, he'd let it go. Leo looked down at his hands. I thought you chose him over me. I left town the next week. The misunderstanding sat between them like a living thing. Nathaniel reached across the table without thinking and covered Leo's hand with his own. I was wrong. Every day since, I've been wrong. The touch lingered. When they finally pulled apart, the air felt charged. Leo walked Nathaniel to his car. I'm not the same kid who ran away, he said. I came out to Sarah years ago. She's my biggest supporter. Nathaniel nodded, chest aching. I'm still figuring out how to be that honest. Leo's eyes held his. You don't have to figure it out alone. That night Nathaniel canceled dinner with Emily, claiming a migraine. He sat in his dark living room and let the memories flood in. The laughter, the fear, the love he had buried so deep he almost forgot how it felt. The next morning his assistant handed him an invitation to Sarah's housewarming party the following weekend. She insisted I deliver it personally, the woman said with a grin. Nathaniel accepted it, knowing he was stepping onto a path that had no easy exit. The party was warm and crowded with Sarah's friends and neighbors. Tommy tackled Nathaniel the moment he walked in, showing off the new superhero cape Leo had bought him. Nathaniel laughed despite himself. Leo was in the kitchen helping with food, sleeves rolled up, looking completely at home. Their eyes met across the room, and something unspoken passed between them. Later, when the guests thinned out, Leo found Nathaniel on the back porch. You came. Nathaniel nodded. Couldn't stay away. They stood side by side watching snow fall softly on the backyard. Leo's shoulder brushed his. I've spent 10 years trying not to think about you, Leo admitted. Failing miserably, Nathaniel turned to face him. I never stopped thinking about you. The confession hung in the cold air. Leo searched his face, then stepped closer. Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling. Neither moved to kiss, but the almost was more intimate than anything Nathaniel had felt in years. When Tommy called for Leo from inside, they pulled apart, but the connection remained, fragile and new and terrifyingly real. Monday at the office, Nathaniel's father dropped by unannounced. Emily says you've been distant. Son, we need to lock in this wedding. The board is watching. Nathaniel smiled tightly and promised to handle it. Inside, panic clawed at him. That evening he drove to Leo's studio uninvited. Leo let him in without question. They sat on the worn leather couch and talked for hours, about the years apart, the relationships that never quite fit, the fear that still lived in Nathaniel's chest. When Leo finally walked him to the door, he paused. Whatever you decide, I'm here. No pressure. Nathaniel left feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. The next day, he broke things off with Emily over coffee. She cried, but she also said she had suspected something for months. Just be honest with yourself, Nate. That's all I ask. Her kindness cut deeper than anger ever could. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments and growing dread. Nathaniel and Leo met in quiet corners of the city, late-night drives along the lake, coffee at 2 a.m. In empty diners, long walks where words finally flowed freely. Leo shared stories of his photography trips, the community he had built, the peace he had found living openly. Nathaniel listened and felt the old shame loosen its grip. One night, in Leo's apartment, they sat on the floor surrounded by photo albums. Leo pulled out an old picture of the two of them at college, arms around each other, smiling like the future was theirs. Nathaniel traced the image with a fingertip. I was so scared that day. Leo leaned in. I know. But you're not that scared kid anymore. Their first real kiss since college happened then. Slow, careful, full of 10 years of longing. When they pulled apart, Nathaniel's eyes were wet. I don't want to hide anymore. Leo rested his forehead against Nathaniel's. Then don't. But the world outside refused to stay quiet. Nathaniel's father heard about the broken engagement and demanded an explanation. Nathaniel dodged, claiming work stress, but the pressure mounted. At the office, his loyal assistant Marcus noticed the change. Whatever's going on, I've got your back, Marcus said one afternoon. Nathaniel almost told him everything. Almost. Then Sarah called with news that Tommy had the flu and asked if Nathaniel could pick up medicine on his way over. He went, of course. Leo was already there, cooling Tommy's forehead with a cloth. The domestic scene hit Nathaniel like a wave. This was the life he had always wanted but never allowed himself to imagine. Later, when Tommy was asleep, the three adults sat in the living room. Sarah looked between them and smiled knowingly. I've seen the way you two look at each other. I'm happy for you both. Nathaniel's heart stuttered. Leo reached over and squeezed his hand openly. For the first time, Nathaniel didn't pull away. The bubble burst 3 days later when Marcus accidentally walked in on Nathaniel on a private call with Leo. I love you, Nathaniel had said softly into the phone. Marcus froze in the doorway. Nate, I didn't know. Nathaniel hung up quickly. It's complicated. Marcus nodded, but the next day the rumor mill started. Whispers followed Nathaniel down the halls. His father showed up furious. Is this why you ended things with Emily? Some phase with a man? Nathaniel stood tall. It's not a phase, Dad. It's who I am. The words felt like freedom and terror at once. His father left without another word, but the damage was done. Board members began asking questions. Investors pulled meetings. Nathaniel drove straight to Leo's studio that night, shaking. Leo held him while he finally let the tears come. I'm losing everything, Nathaniel whispered. Leo kissed his temple. You're gaining yourself. That's worth more. The misunderstanding that nearly broke them came the following week. Leo saw a tabloid photo of Nathaniel having lunch with his ex-college roommate, the same friend who had accidentally leaked their relationship years ago. Leo assumed the worst, that Nathaniel was still hiding and using old connections to smooth things over. He confronted Nathaniel at his penthouse, voice raw. Are you ashamed of us again? Nathaniel's eyes widened. No, he's just an old friend helping with damage control at work. But Leo was already backing away. I can't do this again. I won't be your secret. The door closed between them, and Nathaniel stood alone in the silence, the pain sharper than any boardroom loss. Nathaniel spent 3 sleepless nights replaying the fight. He called Leo repeatedly, left messages explaining everything, but silence answered. Sarah finally intervened. He's hurting, Nathaniel. But he still loves you. Don't give up. Armed with her encouragement and a determination he hadn't felt in years, Nathaniel drove to the studio at closing time. Leo was locking up when he arrived. Please listen, Nathaniel said, stepping into the light. He poured out the truth. The roommate had offered legal advice about the company bylaws, nothing more. I told my father the truth. I told the board I'm gay. I'm done hiding. Leo's shoulders dropped. You did what? Nathaniel nodded. For us. For me. They stood in the cold until Leo finally pulled him into a fierce hug. I'm sorry I doubted you. The kiss that followed tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. But the real storm was still coming. Nathaniel's father called an emergency board meeting and publicly questioned his son's leadership. Personal choices are affecting the bottom line, he stated coldly. Whispers turned to open gossip. Marcus, the assistant Nathaniel had trusted, leaked a private email to the press in a misguided attempt to protect the company. The betrayal cut deep. Headlines screamed about the closeted CEO and family empire in crisis. Nathaniel's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Through it all, Leo stayed by his side, cooking simple dinners, holding him when the doubt crept in. You're stronger than this, Leo reminded him every night. We're stronger together. The turning point came at the annual company gala. Nathaniel had been advised to skip it, but he refused. He walked in with Leo beside him, hand openly clasped. Cameras flashed. Board members stared. His father stood at the podium, mid-speech, and froze when he saw them. Nathaniel stepped forward, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. I've spent my life building this company on honesty and integrity. It's time I showed the same honesty about who I am." He introduced Leo as the man he loved. The room erupted in murmurs, but a few employees actually clapped. His father's face turned red, but he didn't interrupt. Later, in the quiet hallway, his father approached. "I don't understand it," he said gruffly. "But I won't lose my son over it." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. Nathaniel felt the years of weight begin to lift. That night back at the penthouse, Leo pulled Nathaniel close. "You did it. You faced everything." Nathaniel smiled against his shoulder. "We did it." They talked until dawn about the future, maybe a smaller house near Sarah and Tommy, maybe Leo moving some of his work downtown. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled him. Nathaniel had chosen truth, and the world hadn't ended. It had opened. Spring arrived in Chicago with tentative warmth that mirrored the cautious hope growing inside Nathaniel. The board had voted to keep him as CEO after the initial shock wore off. Turns out honesty resonated with younger investors who valued authenticity. His father still struggled with public appearances, but showed up for Sunday dinners at Sarah's house, where Tommy now called both men uncle. Leo's photography studio thrived with new commissions, and he had started teaching a weekend class on capturing honest moments. Nathaniel watched him with students and felt a pride that had nothing to do with stock prices. One Saturday, they took Tommy to the lakefront, the same place where Nathaniel and Leo had shared their first college kiss a lifetime ago. Tommy ran ahead chasing seagulls while the two men walked hand in hand. "Remember when we were too scared to do this in public?" Leo asked softly. Nathaniel laughed. "I remember being terrified of everything except you." Leo stopped and turned to face him, the sun catching in his hair. "I'm proud of you, Nathaniel. Every day." Nathaniel pulled him close, foreheads touching. "I'm proud of us." They kissed right there on the path. No fear, no hiding. Just two men who had fought through blizzard and betrayal to reach this ordinary, perfect moment. Later that evening, back at the apartment they now shared, Nathaniel stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. Leo joined him, arms sliding around his waist. "What are you thinking?" Nathaniel smiled. "That one snowy night changed everything. One act of stopping when I could have kept driving led me back to you." Leo kissed his neck. "And led you back to yourself." They stayed like that until the stars came out, the weight of the past finally settling into something lighter. Lessons carried forward, not chains. Nathaniel's journey wasn't over. There would still be awkward family holidays and occasional boardroom stares, but the man who once ran from himself now ran toward the life he chose. Sarah and Tommy became the family he had always needed, and Leo became the home he had always wanted. Growth had come through every hard decision, every moment of courage, every truth spoken when silence felt safer. Is it true that a single moment of courage can rewrite an entire life? Or do we only see the rewrite after we've already survived the storm?